Susie Sausage Head.
So, let me tell y'all about the time Susie Sausagehead was on a date with her guy friend. They decided to go bowling on this particular occasion, just as something casual to do. Susie, for her part, was looking forward to seeing what her guy friend looked like when he was wearing full shoes with laces, because she'd only ever seen him wearing slides. Even in the rain, the man always wore slides. Susie couldn't tell anyone why the man never wearing shoes that covered his toes and contained laces bothered her. A random observation and a weird one to be hung up on, but there it was. Little did Susie know this was just the beginning of random observations she'd be making throughout the evening that would ultimately end with her looking towards a new prospect. Susie and her guy friend were in his car and driving to the bowling alley. As soon as they pulled into the parking lot, Susie's guy friend slammed on the brakes and strained his neck to get a better look at a car in the parking lot. He was in a panic because he thought he'd spotted the car of someone he knew and did not want to run into them because he was supposed to be at work. As they slowly crept by the car, he made his assessment and was satisfied that this car did not belong to anyone he knew. At this point, Susie was really beginning to wonder about her guy friend. It was one thing not to own any shoes with laces. It was quite another to be a grown man hiding from other people. Susie didn't like it, but exited the car with him anyway to begin the bowling date. Still, she was now watching him carefully while taking a mental tally of his behaviors. Susie Sausagehead's guy friend held the door open for her while she entered the bowling alley. It was well lit inside due to this being a daytime date. 5 out of the 20 lanes were unoccupied, and after Susie and her guy friend were given their bowling shoes, they were ushered to their empty lane. As she was putting down her handbag and going to pick out her bowling balls, Susie took a moment to look down at her guy friend's feet. This was, after all, the first time she'd seen him with actual shoes on, complete with laces. Not half bad if she was being honest. Once they'd both picked out their balls and entered their names into the computer, the game was on. Susie herself was not an avid bowler, but she was good at it. Strikes came easily enough for her, but she was not braggadocious about it. Susie did not believe in competition in general, and more importantly, she did not see her romantic partners as competitors. Susie was soon to learn, though, that she was alone in this assessment. The first game played out in almost the exact way Susie Sausagehead saw it going, with her winning by a fair margin. What Susie did not see coming was a sulking coming from her guy friend. He was taking his loss a little harder than she would have expected. Again, to Susie, this was just a date night activity. Apparently, though, her guy friend was taking it personally. He was taking it so personally that by game 2, he started using her bowling ball that she'd been getting the most strikes with. During game 1, it was all excuses from him about how he had to warm up and that it'd been a while for him since he'd last bowled. Once he had Susie's strike ball and he was now getting the strikes, he began to make leering eye contact with Susie, as if to insinuate that she wasn't as good as she thought and that he would be winning from now on. Again, Susie still cheered all of his victories and did not rub his failings in his face. To her, it was a date night activity. He could not do the same for her, rather gloating when she sank a gutter ball and taunting with her strikes. They had gotten the unlimited bowling special and had the lane for several more hours, but Susie Sausagehead found herself wanting to go home and get away from this shoeless bully, and was about to announce as much after her turn was up when she bowled another strike. Susie rolled her eyes and got ready to turn around, thinking to herself, "He's gonna be butthurt," when all of a sudden she heard clapping. A round of applause. When Susie scanned the room, her eyes fell upon a group of people she hadn't noticed come in and set up. The one cheering her on was a nice-looking young man. He had the biggest smile on his face and was telling Susie in excited, animated tones how great her strike was. This new young man then began to compliment Susie's form and technique, all while walking toward her to give her a double high five. When their hands came together, their fingers laced, and Susie had a chance to get a good look at her new cheerleader. She gazed into his bespectacled eyes, and for a moment, Susie glimpsed her future. That was until she heard her guy friend behind her saying, "Your turn." Susie Sausagehead jumped a little while unlacing her fingers from her new random cheerleader and returned to her date. She walked past her guy friend with a smile on her face, picked up the bowling ball he was not using, and bowled another strike. Immediately, she heard cheering coming from behind her and knew immediately it was her new admirer. As Susie watched her date saunter up to the bowling lane, she wondered to herself if she would be in the wrong for engaging in conversation with a guy that did not see her as an op. She held off though. After all, they did ride together, and the guy friend did know where she lived. Still, Susie wondered. Her guy friend was now being very aggressive with his bowling technique. He was throwing the ball anywhere just to get his turnover and get Susie away from her new cheerleader. By the time the game was over, Susie was winning again and had given up on any pretense of comfort and compassion for her date. She was now determined to get her cheerleader's number. As they were putting their shoes on and putting the balls away, Susie Sausagehead took the opportunity to go over to her cheerleader and ask if they could hang out sometime. Before he could answer, an older woman approached with some authority, stating that exchanging numbers would not be possible. This was because Susie's cheerleader's guardian kept his mobile device. Susie's confusion must have been written all over her face, because the woman went further to explain that the cheerleader had care providers due to neurological conditions. Susie's cheerleader had never taken care of herself, had never been on a date, and would probably never live alone. Susie ran through the gambit of emotions: despair that she had lost out on a great guy, then hope that she could be his caregiver. Finally, resolve, as the older woman shook her head slowly, somehow intuiting what Susie was thinking. The cheerleader must have been through this situation before, thus the older woman was used to letting the ladies down easy. Susie turned to find her date and leave for her place. She would spend the rest of the evening crying into her pillow. She blocked her guy friend as soon as she was on the other side of her front door, then began lamenting the guy with a beautiful mind and how he got away.